Hey guys, Ryan here. In this video we're going to reverse engineer Wordle. We're going to find out how it works, predict future solutions and see what's so special about the 21st of October 2027. Before we get started, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for future videos. Without further ado, let's dive right in. So the first thing we're going to do is go to VS Code and just open up a new folder. Now that we've got VS Code open, let's go to the Wordle site, right click and click View Page Source. I'm going to select all of this, copy it and go back to VS Code and create a index.html. Within this file, we're just going to paste everything. Now that we've got the site code, we're going to look for some logic. So this is normally going to be in like a JavaScript file. So if we search for .js, we're going to see there's only one JavaScript file here, main.js. So we're going to go back to the site, scroll to the bottom and click on this script. And then we're going to copy all of this into our VS Code project. We need to make sure that we name it the same that's in the site. So for this is main.e65ce0a5.js. Paste all of it in and click save. Here you can see there's actually only 2 lines of code. This is probably because it's been minified in order to reduce the file size. So let's open up our index.html in a web browser. And here you can see we've got the whole Wordle site working locally. If I put in today's word, here you can see that it's all working as it should be. So how do we go about reverse engineering this? Well, first we're going to click Inspect. We're going to go to Sources and we're going to go to our main.js file. And here you can see it's saying it will print this for us. We want this so that the code's more readable. I'm going to copy all this formatted code and replace our JavaScript file with it. Now here you can see the code is a bit more readable and easier to understand. Now that we've got the code in a readable format, we can now start reverse engineering it. So the only piece of information we know about this is today's word. So let's start with that. Let's search for this word in the code. Searching for this word, we can see it's actually contained in a string array called LA. So I think this is going to be our starting point. I'm going to create an answer.js where we can start copying important parts of the code. So I'm going to copy all of this array and paste it in answer.js. Going back to main.js, we now need to know where this LA is being used. So to do that in VS Code, we can right click on LA and click Go to References. Scrolling back up, it shows us 4 references for this. The initial instantiation and then 3 more references. One here that looks very promising is this LA square brackets A close square brackets. This looks to me like it's going to retrieve a value from this array. So let's first double click on this to go to this line. Here we can see a function called DA. I'm first going to copy this into our answer.js. Working our way up from the bottom of this, we can see that it returns 2 values, one of which is from the LA array, which is most likely going to be our solution word. Working our way up, we can see that it also calls GA. So let's go to GA and take a look at what this function does. To do that, we can right click on it and go to definition, and it's just below here. So this simply returns NA with 2 variables. So let's copy this and then go to NA. Once again, right click, go to definition. Taking a look at NA, it seems like this doesn't call any more functions, so this looks like the bottom of our tree. Let's take a look at the answer.js and see what methods we've got now. So it looks like it works its way up from DA, which then gets some values from GA, which then gets some values from NA, which then propagate all the way back up to then give us this value A, which is the index of our word in the LA string array. So we now need to see what calls DA to make sure this is our solution. Right clicking on DA, we can click Go to References. We can see it's only got one reference, which it sets e.solution to DA, taking in a parameter of e.today. Taking a look at e.today, we see this is a new date, which means today's date. So this is going to be the input to the whole game to work out what the solution is for today. From this, we can know that our solution is going to be DA open brackets new date or today's date. We can then change this date variable to get future and past solutions. However, that's not quite the solution, as some of these functions we've seen here have dependencies on other variables. So let's work through them one by one to see what we need. I think the best place to start is at the bottom, and then we can work our way up. So taking a look at the NA, we can see takes in a variable called E, which is a parameter, a variable called A, which is a parameter, and then S, which is a variable, and then finally T, which is also a variable. So we can see this function doesn't have any dependencies. Working our way back up, we can see the function GA runs the NA method and takes in E, which is a parameter, and HA. Currently, we don't have a definition for HA, so let's go to our main.js and try to find that. Going back to the GA command, we can then right click on HA and click Go to Definition. Here we can see HA as a fixed date of the 19th of June. I'm going to presume that this is the starting date of the first ever Wordle. Let's copy this variable into our answers.js. Now that we have the HA variable and also have E as a parameter, let's work our way up one more. So here we can see this takes in LA, which we've got, which is our array. It takes in S, which it's getting from the GA method, and then E, which is a parameter. So now it looks like we've got all of the dependencies that we need. So let's just create a quick page so that we can test to see that this works. So I'm just going to create a quick page called answers.html, which just has a p tag with an ID of answer, and then imports the script of answer.js that we've just created. Within our answer.js, we can then set the text value of this p tag to what we think is going to be today's solution. So to do this, we can just do document.getElementById, the ID which is, we set it as answer, and set the content of this to the solution variable, which we're getting from the DA method. Opening answer.html in a browser should show us today's word, which for me is pleat. Okay, to make this easier to understand, I've renamed some of the methods to first method, second method, and third method. Okay, before we try and work out future or past solutions, let's first work out how the code is working. So starting at the top here, we call the first method with where E is the date of the solution we want to work out. Here we're simply passing the solution date into the second method, and the second method simply just passes the solution date and HA, which we've decided is the first ever solution date, into the third method. So coming down to this third method, we can see it's re-instantiating the start date, and then it's going to remove this start date from what we think is our solution date, which in JavaScript, minusing one date from the other will give us the difference between the two in milliseconds. Finally, we're doing math.round the difference divided by this number here. Putting this number into a JavaScript console gives us the number 86,400,000, which happens to be the amount of milliseconds in a day. So what we now know this is doing is it's getting the solution date, which normally is today's date, finding the difference between that date and the first ever Wordle date, and then trying to get this difference in days rather than milliseconds. The answer is then returned back up to the second method, which is then returned back up to the first method. So we're instantiating two variables here in the first method, A and S. S is returned from the second method, which is then returned from the third method. So now we know S is the difference between the first date and the solution date in days. Okay, finally we can see that A is set to S percentage LA.length, where S is the difference in days. This percentage sign operator means we're dividing the first number by the second number and returning the remainder. For example, 5 percentage sign 2 would equal 1, because 2 goes into 5 twice and has a remainder of 1. However, in our situation, we aren't dividing by 2, but we're dividing by LA.length. We can work out LA.length by putting a breakpoint on line 10 in sources, answer.js line 10, and reloading the answer.html. And hovering over this, we see that LA.length is 2,315. Due to this being such a large number, this line of code is going to return our difference in days until our difference is over 2,315. For example, if our difference is 220, then 220 percentage sign 2,315 still equals 220. This is because 2,315 doesn't go into 220. However, once our difference is over 2,315, such as 2,316, then 2,316 percentage sign 2,315 equals 1, as 2,315 goes into 2,316 once and has a remainder of 1. The value from this line is then used as our index for the LA array to get our solution value. For example, if A equals 0, then this is going to get the first item in the LA array, and if A equals 100, then it's going to get the 101st value from the array. So why is 2,315 such an important number in the context of Wordle? Well, it means that once our difference in days between the original start date of Wordle and the current date hits 2,315, then the Wordle solution will loop all the way back round to the first ever Wordle solution. This means that the game will actually reset itself. It just happens to be that 2,315 days after the first ever Wordle solution, the 19th of June 2021, will be the 21st of October 2027. So this is when, unless the code is changed, the Wordle game will reset. Okay, in order to now get future and past values, I'm going to go to my answer.html and simply add a date selector and a button. Here we can see the date selector is an input with type date and has got an ID of selection date. And then the button also calls a method called getTheSolution. So go to answer.js and we're now going to create the getTheSolution method. Okay, within this getSolution method, we're going to get the date from our date picker. We're then going to pass this into our first method. And then we're going to set the text contents of the answer paragraph to results. So now we can delete these 2 lines from previously and open our answer.html. Okay, now opening our answer.html, we then can select a date from our date picker and click solution, and it will give us the word for that. So we can see tomorrow's, and we can go back 1 day as well and see that date. We can go to the first date, which was the 19th of June, and see that the word was cigar. Going to the 21st of October 2027 to see that this word will also be the first word in the series. And that's it. We've now seen how the code works and can get solutions for past and also future puzzles. What we've just done works with us today, but is of course dependent on the code not changing in the future. Thank you for watching. If you learned something, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe for future videos like this, and let me know in the comments below what your best Wordle score is so far.